It's good seeing you.
Up next on C-SPAN's Road to the White House, Minnesota Representative Michele Bachmann. Last Friday evening, the Republican Congresswoman and founding member of the House Tea Party caucus spoke to nearly 300 members of Iowans for Tax Relief. She was born in Waterloo, Iowa, before moving to the Minneapolis area, where she served in the state Senate before being elected to Congress in 2006. This was her second visit to Iowa this month.
Thank you, Ed. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, everyone who's here tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Iowans for Tax Relief. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. What a wonderful group. I wish everyone could see your faces. As many of you know, I am an Iowan myself. I was born here in Waterloo, Iowa. I'm a seventh-generation Iowa. I descend from, my dad called us Iowans. My brother said, don't say that. No one will have any idea what you're talking about. Does anyone here know what an Iowan is? Yes. Okay. All right. My brother was right. You may know my other brother. He was a TV weatherman here at WHO TV for a number of years, Gary Amble. Any of you remember Gary Amble? That's my brother. That's my brother. But thank you so much for that wonderful, warm welcome. And Ed, thank you for your leadership of this absolutely outstanding organization. Would you be willing to come to Minnesota and start one up there, too? I think we need one. I come from a very different neighborhood up there, let me tell you. We've had such a great day today. My husband, Marcus, is with me today. My husband of 32 years. Marcus, if you could stand up. Behind every good Norwegian girl, there's a Swiss husband, and there he stands. We've had 32 great years together. We have 5 biological kids, and we've had our 23 foster kids. We're so proud of all of them. None are in jail right now, and we're just so proud of these kids. But we've had a really great day coming home to Iowa today. Iowans are so nice. They are the nicest people in the world. My dad always used to tell me that Iowans are the best looking people in the world. And I can see he's absolutely correct. And I remember when I was filling out my little Iowa Basic Skills test. Do you remember taking that when you were little? In Cedar Falls, Iowa, at Valley Park Elementary, I remember taking our Iowa Basic Skills test. And we were always so proud because we were #1 in the nation. Iowa was always #1 in the nation. So here you are. Iowans are the nicest people. They're the best looking people. They're the smartest people. No wonder everybody wants to come to Iowa. You know, it should be no shock that a girl comes here. I know that there's been a lot of speculation, though, about why I'm coming here to Iowa today, and I don't want to keep you in suspense for one more minute, because it is with pride in my heart that I am here to announce tonight in Iowa, it's really good to be home. I am a congresswoman from your neighbor to the north up in the great state of Minnesota. We've produced a lot up in Minnesota. We've given you Hubert Humphrey. We've given you Eugene McCarthy. We've given you Walter Mondale. We've given you Paul Wellstone. And yes, Al Franken. We've given you a lot out of the state of Minnesota. But we've also given you Post-it notes, and we've given you spam. So we kind of think it evens out a little bit there. But it is a great time in our country to be thinking about some very, very important issues. And I know that the values that I learned in my life, I learned here in the great Hawkeye State. And I am so proud to have this as my heritage and as my background. Because here in Iowa, we've laid the foundations and the seeds, I think, for the greatness. And I put a lot of time into thinking about what I wanted to say this evening when I was extended this wonderful invitation to be able to come to you. And I was thinking just back about my own roots and my own family. And my daughter and I pulled out a family history, and we started reading it to each other at night. Our youngest is 16 years of age, and we were lucky enough to have a relative, Paul Munson, that wrote some of our family history. And I'm ashamed to say that I hadn't read the book yet to know what it was. And I had tears come to my eyes when I read about our family and what they went through to get to this country. And you all have the same story that you could tell, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt said we're all a nation of immigrants. Other than the Native Americans, who this truly was their original country, we are all a nation of immigrants. And so in our history, we go back to 1857 to my great-great-great-grandfather, Melker Munson and Martha Munson. They lived at the Sognefjord in Norway, and there was only 2% of the land was tillable in Sognefjord. You wonder why all those Norwegians left Norway to come over to the United States. You try to make it on 2% tillable acreage. And here he was about 45 years of age. They had 5 children, and they had very few prospects at that time. The inheritance laws in Norway were such that you couldn't accumulate wealth. Interesting how government does that. They had changed the inheritance laws so that a person couldn't sell their land to anyone other than a blood relation from their line, and you couldn't accumulate more land than the land that you had. So Norway was in a process through its government of, in a lot of ways, suppressing wealth creation. Very, very different from the way that America was portrayed. Well, this couple in their 40s, their parents lived to be in their 40s and their 50s. So just think, they're at the end of their life of what they knew their parents' generation to be with 5 kids, but they made a decision, and they had heard about something that came to them. There were some Norwegians that had come ahead of them, and 80 Norwegians had written this document, and it was called the Muskego Manifesto. And you know, it would take a lot to induce somebody to leave their home, give up everything they had, sell everything they had, know that they would never again see the people that they loved, their friends, their neighbors, everyone that they would leave behind. They would never see them. And they literally sold it all and got on a ship with very small quarters, and they didn't have much to begin with, but they bought their tickets for each of themselves and their 5 kids, and they got on the ship. But what induced them was this document, the Muskego Manifesto, written by 80 Norwegians who had come to America, who wanted other Norwegians to come and join them. And this is what the document said. It said, "We live under a generous government in a fertile land where freedom and equality prevail in civil and religious affairs, and without any special permission, we can enter almost any profession and make an honest living. This we consider more wonderful than riches." This we consider more wonderful than riches. To live in a country where you could choose to be anything that you wanted to be, where you had equality, where you had freedom and fertile land. This is what they heard about. This was that land of promise that went out to these Norwegian immigrants, and the flame of imagination rose in their hearts, and they decided to roll the dice and take the chance. These were risk takers that came to the United States. The greatest wave of immigration were Irish. The second greatest wave were the Norwegians. And they came from all over. Some of you are Dutch, and some of you are German, and some of you are Italian. But all of us descended from risk takers. People that had that flame of imagination in them. They understood and they saw from a distance the land of promise that was the United States. And they decided to shake the dice and make it happen. Well, my forebears, as I said, sold everything. They went down to the dock, and when they got there, one of their kids was a very tall Norwegian. You would never know it was my great-great-grandfather looking at my height, but he was 6'3" tall. The parents bought the tickets, and they bought a child's fare for him because he was 11 years old. He was a child, but the captain of the ship said, "Hold on there. You need to pay an adult fare for him. He's a big kid. You're not going to get on this boat with an adult fare." An adult fare cost $25. The family didn't have it. They were already there on the boat, sold everything on the ship, ready to go, and the captain said, "He's not coming aboard." There was absolutely nothing they could do about this. This is a true story. There's nothing. I mean, this is the pluck of our ancestors. So my great-great-great-grandparents said to my great-great-grandfather, Halver, I'm sorry, son. You'll have to go and find a relative to live with back in the village. And as soon as we can, we promise you, we will get the money and we'll send it to you and we'll bring you to join the family. Can you imagine if you were an 11-year-old boy and your parents said that to you and off they went? And so Halver stood on the bank. And Melker and Martha and the other 4 children got on the boat. And if you could have seen that boy's face, the record said he had his hands in his pockets. And he had the most pitiful, forlorn look on his face. And the family was crying. They were heartbroken. And Halver was on the bank of the water and heartbroken, thinking he had to walk back to the village and find someone, some distant relative to listen to and find him and hear his story. And the captain looked at the parents and looked at the boy. And finally the captain said, all right, I guess the ship won't sink. Come aboard. And Halver got to go on the ship. I'm not kidding. And so this kid got to come on the ship, and it was just the first of so many miracles. And the ship took 13 weeks from the time they left Norway until the time they hit Quebec was 13 weeks. And then they had to take an overland route that took many, many more weeks until they got to the mother colony up in Stoughton, Wisconsin. And when they got to Stoughton, a Norwegian met them and walked them. So imagine, they got off after all of this and walked them 6 miles to his home in Stoughton. It was summertime. They had their heavy woolen clothes on. Everything they owned, they carried. And that when they got to this Norwegian's yard, all of them just laid flat out in the front yard and just laid there. They were so exhausted. This is our story. These are the people that came here for just a chance. The chance to write their ticket, the chance to come to this land of promise. When I think of these people and the greatness of these ordinary people, they're the most extraordinary people you could ever imagine. And so my relatives, they essentially built a watertight boat, and they put wheels on it. And so they got as far as DeSoto in Wisconsin, and they literally floated their wagon, and the cattle had to swim across the Mississippi River to get to Lansing. So they got to Lansing, Iowa, and they'd heard that there was free land in the Dakotas. So they went 300 miles on the wagon, no marked roads, just military trails at the time. They went through Fort Atkinson, Fort Dodge, Sioux City, got over to the Dakotas. They got there, and they had the worst snow and winter in 42 years once they got to the Dakotas, and they made their little dugout sod house. The next winter, or the next summer, they had the worst flood in 50 years. Their 3rd year in America, they had the very worst drought that had ever been seen in the Dakotas. The 4th year, locusts came, ate everything they had. So all of a sudden they remembered, Iowa, that was the land of milk and honey. We're getting out of here. We're going back to Iowa. So they got in their wagon. Back they went through Sioux City, retraced their route. They got to Chickasaw County, if anyone knows where Chickasaw County is, up by New Hampton and Cresco and Luther College and up by that area. I guess Luther College wasn't there back then. That's where my mother went to college. That's where they went, and they planted their farm. And 7 generations of my family ever since were there. And Halver, this young boy who got on the ship when he was 15 years of age, joined up with the Union Army and fought in the Civil War. And today when I was at the Capitol here in Des Moines, I saw the beautiful mural of all of the Civil War soldiers who had gathered in front of the Capitol here in Des Moines. And in the family history, there's a recording that I just read of Halver coming to the Capitol. And to see that picture today, he must have been there in that picture, just to see that painting. And so it struck me today when we saw that painting, that this, again, is our story of these beautiful people and the sacrifice that they brought to build up not just Iowa, but every state across the Union. Because as we look around and we see this magnificent hotel and this beautiful capital city of Des Moines, where there's one gleaming, shining new office building after another, one great industry after another, it's important that as we look at those buildings and admire those buildings, that we recall that it isn't ourselves that built them up. It's people that went before us, who sacrificed, who built it up, and who through their labor literally felled the trees and clawed through the land and picked the rocks and built the barns and did what had to be done to build up this most magnificent country that the world has ever seen. I'm in love with these people, absolutely in love with these people. And as much as I revere our founders, the Thomas Jeffersons and the Benjamin Franklins and the George Washingtons of this country, I think it's important for us to remember that the George Washingtons and the Ben Franklins and the Thomas Jeffersons and the John Adams stood on the shoulders of the very immigrants who came here. It was the ordinary people who lift them up. It was the ordinary people of this country who made this an extraordinary nation. It took a great leap of faith for these people to come here, and they were absolutely marvelous because they did not come here for the promise of a federal handout. They didn't come here for the promise of a welfare payment. They didn't come here for the promise and hope of socialized medicine. They came here for the promise of America. And they came here to live in this land of limitless opportunity. They came here for the chance to write their own ticket. And they came here to build a better life for me and for you. And we are the beneficiaries of their courage. And I am determined to do whatever I can to preserve the promise of America forward, not only for my kids, but for your kids and for the generation that's yet unborn. And that's why I am here tonight, because it is my firm belief that America is under greater attack now from a very different foe, but from a greater attack now than at any time. And it's a problem of our own making, because it's like a thundercloud of debt that is weighing upon our nation, that if we don't quickly turn the ship, the iceberg is straight in front of us. We can all see this iceberg, and we, like fools, are pointing the ship directly into it. But we can turn. We can turn. And it's us who can make that turn happen. Do you realize it's been 21 generations that America has survived? For 21 nations, we've passed the torch of liberty from one generation successfully to the next. And the question we need to ask ourselves tonight is this: will it end with us? Will we be that last generation? Will we be the first generation to fail to pass that torch of liberty? It doesn't seem like a very positive message, does it? But I have to ask you, will we be the ones for whom this great experiment in human liberty will end on our watch? Don't get me wrong. This nation will always exist as a piece of real estate. It will be here as Europe remains as a piece of real estate. But the question is, will we remain the leader in the world? Will we remain the indispensable nation in the world? And will we remain as the exceptional nation of the world? But the question before us that I think is even bigger is, will we become just one more ordinary nation? Just one more country between Albania and Zimbabwe on the roll of the United Nations General Assembly? I don't think so. And I know Iowans. I don't think you think so either. Or will we take action now to ensure that we remain the exceptional nation that our parents thought this country was? A covenant nation, like John Winthrop wrote, just as the Puritans were about to land in Massachusetts Bay, and like my grandparents and yours thought this would be. This story of my family was in my mind when I came to talk to you tonight, because I didn't come to give you just a speech about tax reform. I've got materials for you, materials to give you the context of how grave our financial situation truly is here in the United States at this point. And I'm not here just to revel in triumphs either, like the repeal that we had in the House this week of Obamacare, or the fact that we gained in three-fourths of a century, we haven't seen gains like we had in the House in this election. In fact, I didn't even come here tonight to give you a political speech, because this current crisis that we're in is far bigger than Democrats and Republicans. It's far bigger than an argument just about conservatives and about liberals. This is a much bigger discussion, because it's a single question now that hangs over our country. And it's a question that Abraham Lincoln raised 150 years ago, almost to this very night, when Abraham Lincoln asked if the liberties of our country would be preserved until the latest generation. And the question, quite frankly, is this: will America endure? And I don't say this melodramatically, and I don't say this to scare you or to say it lightly, because tonight I think the answer is in grave doubt. The issues of our daily discourse, things like the crushing deficit and bankrupting America and the size and scope of government, weakening of our national security, those are elements of this momentous question. And it's not raised, unfortunately, in the halls of Congress or in Washington, D.C., or even in the pages of the mainstream media. It doesn't fit the narrative of the political class, but it's the question, I think, that I hear when I'm out in the streets talking to people. And I think this is a question that animates Iowans and Minnesotans and people across the country. Politicians aren't talking about it, but people are talking about this question. Because long before we ever became a republic, indeed the moment, I think, before the first settlers arrived, this unique idea was forged in this covenant called the Mayflower Compact, articulated by John Winthrop, as I had said. It was the compelling moral commandment that was imposed by this covenant on ourselves as a people. It was adopted and honored by every succeeding wave of immigrants, every succeeding wave of their children, and it was the obligation of each generation to the next to bequeath to their posterity the inheritance of a greater America than they had known. And I ask this question wherever I go across the country. I will ask people, do you live better than what your parents lived? Is your standard of living better? I'd ask you that tonight in this room as Iowans. Is your standard of living better than that of your parents? Is it? And so then I ask you, what is your opinion about your children? Do you believe that your children's standard of living will be as high as the one that you enjoy right now? How many of you believe that? And this is the answer that I get. Very few people will raise their hand on the second question, and almost everyone will raise their hand on the first. Do you realize this is perhaps the first time in 234 years of American history that audiences answer the question that way? That's why I say there is doubt in the minds of Americans that we will continue as this great, exceptional nation. In his first major address, Abraham Lincoln gave this expression when he said, "The latest generation that fate shall permit the world to know. We have a task of gratitude to our fathers, justice to ourselves, duty to posterity, and love for mankind in general, and that requires us faithfully to perform." For 21 generations in America, we've listened to Lincoln's words. We have faithfully performed to the next generation. And our ancestors, when they arrived on these shores, just think of it, they spoke different languages. They had different cultures, different backgrounds, different traditions, but unbelievably, they all bound themselves back to this tradition, this covenant that was contained in the Mayflower Compact, this covenant that we republished in the Declaration of Independence. How unique in all of the world that one nation that was the resting point from people groups all across the world. It didn't matter the color of their skin. It didn't matter their language. It didn't matter their economic status. It didn't matter whether they descended from nobility or whether they were of a higher class or a lower class. It made no difference. Once you got here, we were all the same. Isn't that remarkable? It is absolutely remarkable. And out of that, e pluribus unum, out of that, out of many, one. That is the greatness and essence of this nation. And we know we weren't perfect. We know there was slavery that was still tolerated when the nation began. We know that was an evil, and it was a scourge and a blot and a stain upon our history. But we also know that the very founders that wrote those documents worked tirelessly until slavery was no more in the United States. And I think it is high time that we recognize the contribution of our forebears who worked tirelessly, men like John Quincy Adams, who would not rest until slavery was extinguished in the country. And we have them to thank for that. And so instead of continually going back and looking at the weaknesses and the stains of America, let's look instead at the greatness of America. And because we were a self-correcting country. When you look at the United States dollar bill, when you look at just the simple dollar bill and you see the pyramid on the back of that dollar bill, the top of the pyramid is removed and the all-seeing eye of God is above that pyramid. And you often wonder, well, why wasn't the capstone put on that pyramid? It was symbolic. It's because the founders saw that the history of the nation was not yet written. That was up to us. We were still continuing and perfecting because this was a self-correcting country. And so I come here tonight again to remind us that you are that self-correcting country, and you are the most important part of what's about to happen in the United States. We took a great leap forward, I believe, in this election in 2010, a great correcting step against the temptation in Washington, D.C. for a big overriding centralized government. We saw the passage of socialized medicine. We saw the purchase of private industries. Did you ever think in your lifetime that you would see the federal government purchase the largest car companies in the United States, GM and Chrysler? Did you ever think in your lifetime you would see the United States purchase the largest banks in America, Bank of America, Citibank, or to see America purchase the largest secondary home mortgage companies in America, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac? Today, the United States owns over 50% of all private home mortgages. Your government owns them. Your government now completely runs the student loan industry, and they took over socialized medicine. And President Obama recently signed an executive order so that he would now start implementing cap and trade, a national energy tax. This is stunning, stunning what has occurred in just 2 years' time. But remember, we're Americans. Remember who we descend from. Remember the greatness that belongs to all of you, because you are that self-correcting power. And we saw something very remarkable happen in this last election. And now it's up to you to make sure we see something remarkable happen in the 2012 election. Well, equality was what they came here to be about, and equality was the most important thing that they wanted. And our generation, I think, faces that starkest of all questions, because the failure to honorably convey the rightful inheritance to America will be no less a threat and require no less a response from all of us, because the answer is not with our political figures. I want you to know that. That's what Lincoln told us. It is not with our political figures. It's with each one of you here in this room. And time is running out. If you look at the debt that has been accumulated, From the time George Washington took the presidency on his very first day until the day George W. Bush left as President of the United States, all 43 presidents, if you take all of the debt combined of all those 43 presidents, do you know that all of that debt is less than the debt that was accumulated by Barack Obama in just 1 year? That is the level of debt and spending that we have engaged in. So this isn't hyperbole. This is facts behind it. And in the second year of his presidency, we saw a debt level almost equal to that. In fact, it's even more. On the books, it says 1.29 trillion in debt. It was 1.4 trillion the first year of Barack Obama's presidency, but that doesn't include 200 billion that was spent on Freddie and Fannie. And so it is startling, this debt. Our youngest daughter is 16 years old. By the time she reaches the age of majority, we will have seen Social Security running in the red for years. Last year was the first time Social Security began spending more money than what it was taking in. That happened 6 years ahead of time. We have an IOU account for the Social Security Trust Fund. Many of you may be aware or may not be aware that in the Social Security Trust Fund, there's no dollars in a vault in Washington, D.C. to pay out the Social Security checks. It is filled with IOUs. Why? Because Congress took all of that money out and they've spent it all. The only thing that we have are IOUs in the Social Security Trust account. What are those IOUs made up of? Our labor. That's what the government has to cash. Our labor in order to pay those checks. And so very shortly we will have the specter of having to increase, most likely, out of our paychecks the amount that government is taking out of Social Security if we want to continue putting out checks at the same level. Then consider at the same time Medicare is scheduled, according to the government, to go flat broke by 2017. That's 6 years from now. So 6 years from now, Medicare is scheduled to be flat broke. Social Security is already running in the red. And we are running deficits in excess of $1 trillion every year. We're already at the point where we're at about 60% debt to GDP ratio. And Greece was at 90% when they had riots in the street. And we will be there by 2020. I didn't come here just to depress you on a Friday night, especially when there's a snowstorm. That is not why I came here. But I came to lay context for you so that you'll know that this is a very serious situation that we're looking at. But it's also one of our own making. It wasn't the kind of country that the founders initially thought we would have. They didn't see that we would be a nation, that we would be filled completely with an entitlement mentality. They saw that this would be a nation of freedom, free enterprise, individual personal responsibility. And now it's something that has changed so much more. Well, Abraham Lincoln, with the sesquicentennial, had spoken to us as well that when he left, when he was leaving Springfield, he said that he was an accidental instrument, a temporary instrument called to serve for a limited time. But he said he wanted to appeal to us to bear in mind that it is with you that the decisions lie, not with politicians, not with presidents, not with office seekers, but with you. Shall the Union and the liberties of this country be preserved for the latest generation? And 150 years later, I think those words explain everything that we need to know about our responsibility in this tiny window of opportunity that we have. We have the next election. If we want to kill Obamacare, and if we want to end socialized medicine, it must be done in the next election. It must be done in 2012. And so just like we repealed Speaker Pelosi in 2010, It will be our charge to repeal a President Obama in 2012 and a very liberal Senate in 2012, and instead put in place a bold, strong, constitutional conservative for president who understands the times and knows what to do and has the courage and fortitude to make it happen. That's what we have to look for going forward. The United States faces virtual bankruptcy, as I said, and this week we saw the Chinese come to the United States. And it was in many people's minds as they saw our president bow to the head of China. And as people wondered, were the Chinese coming to measure the drapes when they're in Washington, D.C.? Is this about what's to happen? I don't know if we've gone that far. But we do have some great questions that we have to answer in the next few months. And this is the first great question. Is America to continue to be an exceptional nation? I know we're an exceptional nation. And I think you also know that we're an exceptional nation. Or will we be, as some advocate, an ordinary nation like every other? Will we remain an indispensable nation for good that we've been for more than a century as the beacon of exceptionalism to the world? Or will we just adjust to a managed, inevitable decline? An ordinary America, in my opinion, will be no America at all. And second, how will we govern this nation? Will there be a self-anointed elite presuming to dictate and presuming to know what's best for everyone, telling the owners of this country what they can do, what they can't do, which light bulb they can buy, how much water they can have in their toilet, which insurance policy you're going to have to buy, how much you have to pay for that insurance policy? And third, will we be a nation where individual liberty will be prized? Or will we succumb to the instinct of a managed utopia where the direction lies only with the direction of the bureaucracy of the state? What I'm believing, I think, is the truth of where we are right now in this country. And I don't expect the political class necessarily to understand what I'm saying, but I think that Iowans in this room understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about exceptionalism, the indispensable nation. And others who hear this message, I think, will know what it is that we're all concerned about. Because underlying this struggle for the survival of America 150 years ago during the Civil War was the issue of slavery and the question of whether the words all men were created equal were mere cant or were living reality. And Ken Burns, if you saw his Civil War series, reminded us that the war was waged in 10,000 different places. Americans killed other Americans in thousands, 10,000s, and the hundreds of thousands. And fortunately today we don't face the prospect of an armed, violent civil war, but instead we face the question of whether our nation will live to the latest generation is equally great. It's an underlying issue in the struggle of our time is a slavery of a different kind. Now, the media might twist what I'm about to say, but it doesn't bother me at all because it is a slavery. It is a slavery that is a bondage to debt and a bondage to decline. That's what that slavery entails. It's a subservience of a sovereign people. We're a sovereign people to a failed, self-selected elite. That would be our fate. And on the eve of the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln said, "Fellow citizens, we can't escape history, the fiery trials through which we passed. It will light us down in honor or dishonor. For this generation we shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. Other means shall succeed. This could not fail. The way is plain, peaceful, generous, just, a way which, if followed, the world will forever applaud and God must forever bless. This nation has always been preserved by men and women who rose to the challenge, by the townsmen, by the farmers, by the immigrants who came here, who risked everything to come to the United States, and the soldiers on the battlefield. They deserve this great nation. What I spoke to you tonight was somber. What I spoke to you tonight was serious. But it's also not without a great hope. because my faith is in you, the ordinary Iowa citizens. Because for my money, I take ordinary any day of the week over the self-anointed elite. I love the Iowa ordinary. And what we've seen in recent months has been nothing more than extraordinary, whether it's from the Tea Party or for other groups, the 9/12, Iowans for tax relief. You have mobilized yourselves. You've summoned something deep inside that we have not seen in modern times. I don't know if you realize this. This is absolutely unique. This was no coordinated action like Speaker Nancy Pelosi said. This was AstroTurf and this was all coordinated. This was not coordinated by some central elite. Recognize this was the spirit of 1776 that woke up in all of our hearts and said, get up off the couch. Do something. Don't let this great nation go down. Now is the time to come out. And you saw what happened right here in Iowa, winning your governor's seat, winning your Iowa House seat back, ousting 3 Supreme Court justices. This was a shot heard around the world. And don't think for a moment a lot of justices around this country feel the hot seat now in their own state because of what Iowa did. You rock here in the state of Iowa. It is proof what you did, that this spirit of 1776, this wonderful early Iowa pioneer spirit still lives in this state. And why shouldn't it? Because the blood of these incredible people still flows in our veins. These people that we descend from, these generations who created and built and sustained our country. I believe as great as a task as we have before us in this country, if we once again rely on ourselves before an almighty, holy God, and if we arouse ourselves, if we educate ourselves, if we stand forward to lead, if we fall on our knees and cry out to that most munificent, beneficent Creator, that we can, in our own time, reignite, rejuvenate, reclaim the purpose and greatness of the United States of America, because it is in your hands. This first precinct in the 2012 race, it is in your hands, Iowans, that this question will be decided. And don't forget, like Lincoln said, it isn't all the politicians that are going to come through here. It isn't all the office seekers coming through here who will decide whether America will go on as the exceptional, indispensable nation. It will be Iowans that make that decision. You will be the ones to decide. And that's why I'm so excited, because I feel like I know you, because I was born here. I was raised here. These are my values. I feel like we understand each other. And I trust you with that decision. But I also charge you with that decision today, because you must remember it is your decision going forward in the next 24 months, and you must answer these questions about what kind of a country we can have. Because we can't look to short-term interests. This is too big, and we cannot fail. This is too important. It's now our time. Even the French figured this out, after all. We had been a country for 100 years, and they struck the Statue of Liberty, and Lady Liberty held the torch. They put it in New York Harbor. Even the French figured out we were the torch of the world that lit the way for the future of exceptionalism and greatness. We can do it again. We can do it again. We are that last best hope on earth, because if there is not America, to where do freedom-loving people repair? To where do we go? This is it, and Iowa has it all. So thank you for letting me come tonight. It was a thrill, it was an honor, and I trust you with the challenge. Thank you, everyone.
Let's sneak you around the edge and get you back just a little bit further.
Fine. Thank you that you came.
Thank
Tell
you.
me your name.
Jerry Dix.
Hello, Jerry. Good to see you.
Laura Schulman, thank you for coming.
Hello, thank
Actually
you.
did the
Thank you for
opposite.
coming
I was
out.
raised in Minnesota and moved to Iowa.
Is that where?
All right.
Waseca.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Good to meet you, Marcus.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad that you were here
I got a
tonight.
question. I did a poll yesterday on the phone, Republican poll
Yeah.
for presidential for 12, and they listed 8 folks, but then there was other. You were listed, neither was Herman Cain.
Oh,
They
okay.
had all the rest of them, and they, Herman's already announced.
Isn't that funny?
But the old folks that want to redo it, and there was the ones that were thinking about it. But so I voted for other, which is
Oh,
either you
okay.
or Herman.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much that you came out tonight. What's your name?
Dan.
Hello, Dan. Nice to see you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. What's your name?
Paul Waddell.
Oh, hello, Paul. I'm glad that you came out. Hi, Steve. Hi, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Well, it's
Beautiful
good to
job.
be down here. Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be back in Iowa. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you. What's your name?
I'm Jason Schultz.
Oh, Jason. Okay, good to meet you, Jason.
Hi, thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you. Are you? You're an Iowans too. Oh, good. Are you from Northeast Iowa or where?
We're down there.
St. Charles. Oh, St. Charles? The one that had the tornado go through?
I don't remember.
St. Charles? Oh, back in like 65, they had a tornado. Oh, good to meet you. Good to meet you.
This way? This way, right this way.
All right.
Can I get a
Oh, you got the charts. Good. Oh, yeah, that'll scare the bejeebers out of you looking at those charts. Oh, man, 11.
Oh, I get a picture with you real quick?
Yeah, sure. Where's the camera?
Right here. All right. We got to get you to take a walk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Congressman.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. It's nice. It's so nice to come out.
Michelle, you want to know the people.
All
Are you
right.
kidding? Let me come and see you.
Go Tornadoes.
What's your name?
Tom Vincent,
Hello, Tom.
my wife Georgia.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi, Georgia.
Marcus, nice to meet you.
Well, nice to see you. You're from Anoka. I graduated from Anoka High School.
John Woods.
Hello, John.
It's good seeing
So
you.
now, did you grow up in Anoka, or did you? Are
Yeah, I
you
did, but I'm living in Iowa now.
here in Des Moines?
Yeah, you said all the pretty people moved here.
Yeah, that's what my dad said. That's what my dad said. Now, what's your name?
Jim Urban.
You're Jim?
Yeah.
Good to see you, Jim. Now, tell me where you live.
Urbandale.
In Urbandale. Okay, all right. Well, good to see you.
Oh, that's my
That's your husband. Okay, okay. Hi, what's your
Be
name?
safe. God bless.
Thank you. What's your name? Al Jennings. Okay, nice to see you. Al, hi. What's your name? Hi, Ann.
Hi, how are you? Good to meet you.
Do you live in Urbandale too? You're in Des Moines. Okay, good to meet you both.
Squeeze through here, or do you want to go back?
Sure. I don't know where we're supposed to go. So
Hi.
hi. What's your name?
Sarah.
Hi,
I go
Sarah.
to school at Drake University Law.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you know Laura Dibbing? Lauren
She was on the
Dibbing?
basketball team.
No.
About 2 years ago, she graduated.
Okay, yeah, no, I go to the law school, so I don't know a lot of
great.
undergrads, but
Oh,
yeah.
good luck
Really
to
nice
you.
to meet
Good
you.
to meet you too. Thank you for coming out. Oh, I'd love to. We got lots of signatures here. Good for you. And another one? Oh boy, you're busy.
Congresswoman, let me give you this heartbeat.
Okay, there we go.
And then we got to get you back up on stage for
Okay.
the press avail.
On stage, she's doing it on
She's doing it. I think Katie wants it done up over here.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, we can. Oh, Marcus, can you take your Doug? Can you take it? Can you take a picture? Okay.
All right, come on in.
Yeah, he did do it.
You're so sweet.
Press avail. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ready to go up here?
out of the state capitol when I went on Sean's show. Yeah. Oh, isn't he great? And you know, he's the nicest guy too.
Is that right?
Yes, he's a very nice
We gotta go up to
Thank you, Ms. Bachmann.
Yeah, thank
Katie's
you.
where we're going.
Thank you for giving me so much time today. And I'm so glad that I got a Sure.
You're on my camera.
Sure.
Here, so come on back up. Once you come back up,
Gotta go.
take a couple of questions and go from there.
Go do your job.
Just be ready.
I want to read about it.
Congresswoman, ready for questions?
Michelle, do you have New Brighton in your district?
No, it's not in my district.
Son living in New Brighton.
In New Brighton? No. My district's kind of like yours, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm kind of earmuffs around Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Kathy, why don't you come on the podium?
Where's the Waterloo Courier?
Where's the Waterloo Courier?
Where's the Waterloo Courier?
Not here?
Where's the Waterloo Courier?
Waterloo?
That's my hometown paper. My brother used to deliver that paper.
Okay.
Was this a speech in introducing yourself as a potential run for president?
Well, the reason why I wanted to come down here is to set the table and ask some of the big questions about 2012. We'll be looking at who the nominee will be for 2012, and there'll be a lot of candidates that come through. But what I wanted to do is talk about the big issues and the big questions that I think need to be addressed for 2012.
You want to be the nominee? You want to be the nominee?
I didn't come here for personal ambition. The reason why I came is because there's some big issues that need to be framed, and really, frankly, the issues that I mentioned. Will the United States remain the exceptional nation? We are the indispensable country. Will we stay that way? Will we remain a nation of sovereign citizens where we make our own decisions, or will we be ruled by self-appointed bureaucratic elites? It's really those questions, and I think we need to keep that in mind going forward. And when we look for a nominee, whoever that nominee will be, we need to make sure that they understand how serious these times, that we need bold moves by whoever gets into that office, and they need to have the fortitude to carry it out.
You got a big laugh when you said that you had a big announcement to make and you just want to say you're glad to be home.
Because I am home. And so are you too, Tom.
But you do understand that plays right into the idea that your name is now in the presidential conversation. You're aware of that, I'm sure, and will that continue for months to come, do you think?
Well, I know it is shocking when a girl goes to Iowa that speculation might come along, but I'm here to be a part of that conversation for 2012. I certainly am a part of the conversation. There's been no decision about candidacy, but I want to be a part of the conversation, most definitely.
What's going to help you make that decision?
I don't feel any pressure at all to make a decision about that anytime soon, because right now the main focus is on what do we need to do and what do we need to accomplish for the next 12 months. There's an important narrative that we need to make on the conservative side, and that's that the policies that Barack Obama has put into place during his 2-year term are devastating for continuing our nation as an exceptional, indispensable nation. And unless we repeal many of his bad pieces of legislation, I believe that will lead us into becoming a nation in decline rather than a nation on the ascendancy. For 234 years, we've been a nation on the ascendancy. I don't want to see that end.
And what's gonna help you out as you make your decision, and what would possibly get you to maybe not run or run either way?
Well, again, my focus right now is on this big issue that I'm focusing on what we need to be talking about in the next 12 months. That is really more important on who the nominee is. I think our nominee will bubble up to the surface about a year from now. We'll all know whoever that nominee is. But I think we all need to be talking about the important things over the next 12 months.
You anticipated some misunderstanding of that slavery analogy that you had toward the end. Did you want to clarify what you meant by that?
I thought I was very clear about what I said. It is bondage to debt and bondage to decline as a nation. And we don't want to be slaves to that bondage to economic slavery or slaves to decline in the United States.
Last question.
Given that there was no public option, I wondered if you wanted to elaborate on what made healthcare reform so socialized medicine.
Well, because ultimately the way that the program is built, we'll see a collapse of the private insurance industry. That's very important to the Des Moines area because this is a mecca of insurance industries. If we see a collapse of the private insurance industry, that will most certainly impact the Des Moines area. It'll mean certain job losses and it'll mean greater costs. Already with the imposition of Obamacare, we've had people report that they're seeing increases in their private insurance premiums of 25%, 45%. I mean, this is what Obamacare is. You're getting less in terms of health care and you're paying more. So pay more, get less. What a deal. I don't think that the American people are going to go for Obamacare. The more they learn about it, the more they reject it. And so I think we need to keep our focus. This will be a signature issue. It was a signature issue for 2010. It will also remain a signature issue for 2012. That and the overwhelming debt that we're accumulating.
Thanks, everyone.
Expect to visit your home state.
Pardon?
How frequently do you expect to visit your home state in the next, I don't know, year?
Probably every weekend. Just like I am right now. Thank you. Thank you.
When are you coming back?
Maybe next weekend.
Where's the Waterloo Courier? That's
We're gonna get your accent back.
Great job.
Say hi to Marcus.
Yes, let me get the card and I'm going to go downstairs.